Hello everyone and welcome to another video by Jeremy James Pruchik. In case you missed one of my more recent videos, I want to let you know that I'm looking to expand my content into other things I'm interested in and see where it goes from there. I'll still make Jurassic Park videos from time to time, it's just that I'm going to talk about other things I like too. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about The Walking Dead, because I'm a big fan of the show. And it's kind of funny how I got into it, because I was never into the whole zombie genre to begin with. I mean, I've seen movies like I Am Legend and The Last Man on Earth, and I enjoyed those, but other than that, I never got into anything zombie related. I just felt at the time that all zombie movies were the same. But when the trailer for The Walking Dead came out, I was surprisingly interested in it, but I never got around to watching it for some reason. And people have told me over the years that it's a really good show, I should watch it, and I would tell them that I'm not into zombie stuff. But if I do decide to watch something with zombies, then I'll consider watching The Walking Dead at some point. But again, I just never got around to it. So what happened just at the beginning of this year, actually, is I got home from work one night and my wife was watching The Walking Dead on Netflix. She was only on like the second or third episode, and I just casually sat down and watched it with her, and then in no time I got hooked. So my wife and I ended up binge watching the first 8 seasons on Netflix, and then I downloaded season 9 as it came out. So we caught up to the entire show in just a few months, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. So yes, for today's video, I'm going to talk about The Walking Dead. And to help me do that is my good friend Derrick, who's another big fan of The Walking Dead. He's seen the show multiple times, read the comics, played the video games, a huge fan of The Walking Dead. So welcome, Derrick. Welcome to my video.
Hey, Jeremy. Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, it's great to have you here. I can't wait to talk about today's topic. It's going to be great. But just before we get started, there's a couple of important things I want to mention. The first thing is a spoiler warning, because there's obviously going to be some spoilers in this video. So if you haven't seen up to and including Season 9 and you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch this video. The second thing is that we're going to focus specifically on the TV show. So we're not going to focus on the comics, spin-off material, or anything like that. So now that we got that out of the way, let's begin. So why don't we start off, Derrick, with a little question I have for you. How'd you get into The Walking Dead?
Well, I had a former friend, he was into The Walking Dead, and he had just watched the first season. The second season hadn't come out yet, and he constantly, kind of like what you described, he constantly kept trying to get me into it. He was like, dude, you gotta watch this, it's so good. And eventually I was staying the night at his house one day, and he happened to have the first season on DVD, and he's like, so just watch it with me, man. Just, watch a few episodes, see if you like it. And I was like, okay, because, I didn't have anything else better to do. And I think it was probably on the second or third episode, and I was hooked. That whole night we watched the entire first season, and I couldn't wait for the whole second season to come out, and I haven't missed a season yet.
Wow. So why would you say it's such an addictive show?
Well, I think that the reason that it draws a lot of people and holds a lot of people's attention is because the show makes you think about things that you wouldn't normally think about. Like, for example, you might think, oh, I'd never do this or I would never do that. But given the situation that the characters are in, you don't exactly know exactly what you would do if you were pushed to that limit. And I think that, it appeals to a lot of people's inner curiosity.
Okay, it's kind of like exploring a different side of themselves, if I may say.
I mean, you could say it like that, but I think, for example, if a person gets bit, you would think, well, I love that person, I'd never shoot that person. But you have to think about, what's better, the risk of them possibly turning and, killing the group, or, saying goodbye and, offing that person, it's something that thankfully we don't have to worry about right now.
Right now.
But if you were, but if you were in that situation, it's one of those tough calls, and I think people like tough calls.
And there's certainly a lot of those in the show. And if it's not the walkers that are causing the protagonist problems, it's the villain characters. We've had Shane, we've had the Terminus Cannibals, we've had all kinds of villains come and go in this show.
Actually, if you think about it, the living is actually way more dangerous than the dead. I mean, I mean, with walkers, you know what they're going to do. They're mindless. You can predict them. You can lure them away. They're very easy to deal with. I mean, sure, they can be troubles in groups, but I mean, even in a group, Rick and company have found ways of, getting by or getting rid of groups. The living, on the other hand, is a totally different, thing. And, in a situation like that, it's the living that you should fear, not the dead.
And it's almost as though it's kind of expected with human nature,
Well, I think that's another reason why people like the show is because, you would think that if something like that happened and, the dead were rising and walking around, people would band together and put aside petty differences when really it's the total opposite. I mean, people have died in The Walking Dead for literally the smallest of things. But when it comes to villains, I do think there are two very specific ones that I think we should touch on.
And who would those people be?
None other than the governor of Woodbury and Negan, leader of the Sanctuary.
Exactly. Those two are the big villains of this show, I think. You can have your Terminus cannibals, you can have Shane, you can have the Whisperers, but there's something about the governor and Negan that really make these characters stand out from any other antagonistic character in this entire show.
Oh, and I'd have to fully agree. Both have their strong points, both have their weak points, both have their different weaknesses. And if I remember, I believe that is the topic for this video, isn't it?
Exactly. That's the topic of the video today. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the governor and Negan. We're going to compare them as characters, sort of compare and contrast, figure out their strong points, their weak points, maybe their similarities, what they have in common, and then kind of use that information to kind of figure out which one was the better antagonistic character in the TV show. So what do you think? You think you're up to it?
I think I'm more than ready.
Awesome. So the first character I want to introduce is the first of the two villains that we were introduced to in the TV show, and that's the governor, the leader of Woodbury. So I'll give the floor to you first. What do you think about the governor as an overall antagonistic character?
Well, as an antagonistic character, I mean, I think he was perfect for Rick at the time. Up until that moment, Rick didn't really have anybody that pushed back against him. I mean, he had Shane, but, Shane was... I really don't know how you want to word it, but, Shane had his own problems, and some people might argue that Shane really wasn't a villain in the first place. Yeah. The governor was the first person that was actually aimed at Rick to be Rick's nemesis at the time. And I think for the moment that he was there, he did really well. And not only did Rick have to face the governor once, he almost kind of had to face him twice. Because once they beat the governor kind of went into hiding and then came back with a vengeance.
Right.
And governor, what I call, the Governator, 2.0, he was very, very dangerous, even more so.
Oh, I agree. There's so many things that happened with his character that kind of brought him to that breaking point that just turned him into this psychotic, revenge-driven killer, basically. I don't really know how else to put it.
I mean, if you think about it, the governor was, when you first meet him, okay, he was very, very charming. He was very super intelligent.
Yes.
But he kind of, he did his job. His job was to run Woodbury and protect people, and he was doing it very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the people were being held there against their will. I mean, they were enjoying life.
Exactly. And I know this is going to be a very unpopular thing to some people. In fact, I'm probably going to get some hate in the comments for saying this. But when Michonne and Andrea came into Woodbury, their weapons were taken. And for some reason, Michonne wasn't having it, which is kind of hypocritical considering that's what she ends up doing later to literally everybody else at Alexandria.
Right.
So, Andrea, she's cool with it, but Michonne, she isn't having it. And Michonne literally does everything she can to get her sword back. And when she finally gets to the governor's office and sees the fish tank of heads and especially the zombie daughter, that's when her and the governor, start fighting. And the when Michonne finally goes to kill the governor's daughter, he looks at her and he says, "Please don't." And she looks back at him, and you can tell that Michonne didn't kill the zombie girl, out of safety. She didn't kill her, for mercy. She did it out of spite. She looked him straight in the eyes and did it just because, she didn't like the governor and they were fighting or whatever. And I think that right there was the moment when he snapped.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was the point where, he just lost it because he lost so much coming into this show. He lost his wife, he lost his daughter. Who knows who else he lost up to that point. But you can tell that he didn't have a lot left in life.
Exactly. And then, the thing is it wasn't Michonne's place to do it.
I gotcha. I see what you mean. And I do remember that scene, yeah.
And then, he practically almost kills Michonne for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And she ends up stabbing him in the eye with a piece of glass, which is why he needs that eye patch.
Which is a cool accessory, by the way.
Yeah, matey. And so she ends up running off to Rick, and she's basically like, "Oh no, I made this guy really angry. Please save me." And originally, Rick, rightfully so, he's like, "We don't know these people. We don't know you. We don't want any trouble. Get the hell on." And Andrea's like, "Oh no, I know her. I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for her. We have to protect her." And, Andrea was really good for bringing unwanted drama into the show for many reasons.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of her.
From season 1, she was doing unneedly drama. Season 2, and it's I mean, I'm just gonna say I was really happy when Andrea died.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the character. I mean, I just didn't understand some of the things she did. She basically fell in love with the governor, or was that an act? I was thinking a whole bunch of things when I first saw that.
There was a lot of things that she did that didn't make a whole lot of sense. I get it. She lost her sister, the only family she really had left. But then she's like, "Oh, no one cares about me." And then Dale basically, he's like, "You're a daughter to me, and if you're going to die here in the CDC, I'm going to die with you." And then she's like, "No, that's not fair." And she kind of, she gets mad at him for proving her wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And then she turns around and she suddenly thinks it's a really good idea to start having sexual relations with Shane.
Yeah.
And then she turns around and has sexual relations. Does she have a thing for, blowing the bad guy? I mean, what was next? What was next on her list? Blowing the cannibals of Terminus?
Oh, God. How far we've come, just you mentioned Dale a bit ago. I mean, just think of all the characters that have come and gone over the time, just kind of makes you get nostalgic,
Every time I have to rewatch season 1, I'm always like, they're dead, they're dead, they're dead, they're dead. Oh, they're definitely dead.
Yeah, I think only Rick, not Rick, Carol and Daryl are the only original characters left from the first season that are still alive now. I mean, technically Rick's still alive, but he was kind of written off.
I honestly think you're right. I think it really is just Carol and Daryl now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Everybody else is either gone or written off, but yeah, to go back onto the governor, we kind of got sidetracked for a second there. The governor, as a character, the governor was his arc progressed, his character arc progressed very well.
I agree.
when he met Rick, he gave Rick many, many chances to basically turn over Michonne.
Yeah.
And and he even told him, he's like, we don't want your people, we don't want you, all we want is her. And it just, he was a great villain and a great learning experience for Rick.
I think so, because if it wasn't for the governor, Rick wouldn't be the character he is today, basically.
No, he wouldn't. The governor basically taught Rick that in The Walking Dead, it's not the dead you have to fear, it's the living.
Right, you can't trust everyone, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I think the things that make the governor a really good villain are his charming personality, very intelligent. He's really good at hiding his other side, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, in fact, people who are really super intelligent, really good at hiding things like the governor did, and who are really super charming, I mean, those are actually some of the most famous traits of some of the most famous serial killers, like Ted Bundy and Jim Jones. In fact, if you really wanted to think about it, you could kind of compare the governor to sort of like a Jim Jones thing.
Yeah, because he was the leader, and everybody followed him with utmost loyalty. Like, look at Merle, for instance.
Yeah, but they did have the big difference though is eventually his people did have their breaking point where they're like, wait a minute, what the hell are we doing? Why is this happening?
Yeah, and that's when after he failed to take the prison the first time, he got all pissed, and then he just shot up all his people, most of them anyway.
Yeah,
and then they left him.
Yeah. When the governor went on his hiatus, it was also, after that hiatus was done, it was around the time too when we learned that the governor was still able to like feel love, because he ended up falling for that woman, her little daughter, and that was also the same time when we first started to meet Tara.
Right, I remember that.
And I mean, obviously the governor had feelings, because the little girl wanted that board game, and he went up and there was that whole ordeal. But he could have had a really good thing going there, but he was just so driven, which is another thing. The governor is driven.
Yes.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, I've never met a character more driven than he ever was.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he would exhaust every option to make sure he got what he wanted, no matter what it took. If it meant him losing all his people, who cares, right?
Exactly. And but his downfall, honestly, was him being so driven, and the ability that he just couldn't let go.
Right. Like, he just had that grudge.
Yeah, and he just couldn't let it go.
Yeah.
And in the end, that's you could say that's kind of what killed him. Like, he could have just left Rick and them alone. They thought he was dead, they didn't know where he was. He could have gone off and started something else new, but he just couldn't let it go.
No. And actually, he could have took Rick's offer. Like, do you remember when they went to the prison again, Rick was trying to plead with him, like, look, it doesn't have to be this way. We could live together, different cell blocks, we won't even know we're here. We can live together. And then the governor says, well, I don't think my people would sleep well at night knowing that you'd be under the same roof. And then Rick's like, well, I know it's not going to be easy. It's a hell of a lot harder than us just shooting at each other. And then, the governor already made up his mind at that point, no matter what.
Well, the thing is you really can't blame him, because you really can't trust Rick either, Rick is one of those type of people where when he has the upper hand, it's basically, fuck you, I'm winning, why am I going to negotiate with you? But then the minute that everything starts turning bad for Rick, all of a sudden Rick wants to be the one to make the deals and everything. You really can't trust Rick either.
I see where you're going, yeah. I mean, how many times did the governor try to bargain with Rick? I mean, at least 2 or 3, right?
I mean, I think it was probably more. Like,
yeah.
He even had Rick go to a sit down.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, "Look, this is going to be like the last time that I tell you.
I brought whiskey."
yeah, this is the last time, you and me are going to have this conversation. If we don't work out an agreement here, it's full on war. And Rick, thought, well, I got my prison, I got my walls, I have more people than you. Rick basically, told him, get fucked. And then when the governor shows up at Rick's doorstep and Rick didn't plan for it or anything, suddenly that's when Rick wants to make the deal. It's like, come on, dude.
And I think that's what probably led to one of the most dastardly things I think the governor did was right after he heard Rick plead his case, he's just like, liar. And then he killed Herschel.
I mean, Herschel's death was pretty, I'm gonna be honest, that one kind of hit me a little bit, but
he was a good character.
I mean, yeah, he really was a good character. But if you think about it, Herschel, for character development for both Maggie and everyone else, I mean, Herschel kind of had to go,
At some point eventually, yeah.
Yeah, because without Herschel, his daughters really, really grew into their own. They didn't have Dad there as a backup fall,
right. Yeah, I mean, when the governor did that, he already reached the point of no return. I don't think there was any redemption for him. He just went completely psychotic and just lost it.
I mean, everybody knew because it was the writing on the wall. The governor was going to reach that point, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Eventually it got to the governor had invested so much into this war with Rick that there was no way that he just by that time he wanted more than just Michonne. Like it had gotten personal with him.
Yeah.
He had lost Woodbury, he'd lost all of his people, he'd lost any resources he had, and he was at this point in time he wanted Rick to feel what he felt. And he basically had like a giant psychotic break. And he was willing to do literally whatever it took to make sure that Rick had absolutely nothing, just like he did.
Which brings me to a question now that you mention that. You remember Rick was bargaining with the governor at the prison the second time, and then the governor's like, all you gotta do is just pack your bags and walk, we'll leave you alone. Do you think that, let's say Rick took that offer, do you think the governor would have let him walk away, or do you think he would have shot him?
I'd like to think the governor would let him walk away, but I honestly think it'd be about a 50-50. I really do.
I personally think that he would have killed Rick and all his people, just because there's been a lot of times in the show that he's been very manipulative and just a lying bastard, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, the thing that makes me think that he wouldn't is the time, like, when he killed all those soldier guys for all the weapons and everything.
Right.
But you also have to think of it this way. The reason he killed all those soldier guys was because he needed the weapons, I think if Rick and them I think if they would have just gave him what he wanted, and if they didn't have anything that he wanted, I think he would have let them go. But, I mean, if I had to put a percentage on it, I think there's maybe a 60% chance he would have killed him.
Okay. I think that if the governor saw anybody as a threat, he would kill them.
Well, that just like Rick would.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just like anybody would in that situation. I mean, if you're a threat, you're dead.
So yeah, I think the governor's biggest asset to being a villain is his drive, but I also think it's his biggest downfall too. So it kind of goes hand in hand,
Yeah, that's what I was kind of hinting at earlier when I was doing my whole speech about his drive and everything.
Yeah.
That his biggest strength is his biggest weakness, because and we'll touch more on this a little bit later because it goes hand in hand with Negan, but his drive literally meant that, like you said, he would fight until he had absolutely nothing left to give. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, and in some ways that can win you quite a bit, there's there's a lot of things where that's actually a very bad way to go about it.
Right.
I mean, like, when you're fighting another living group in The Walking Dead, I'd like to think of it as like a game of chess. Everybody is a piece. Everybody has their purpose. And as pieces are moved across the board and as the war goes on, certain pieces are taken out, and as those pieces are taken out, the battle ends up changing. The governor didn't care. He just sent everything out all at once. He didn't think about anything. And in some ways that might be a good idea, but I mean, in a lot of ways, that's a really bad idea.
Yeah, like don't put all your eggs in one basket kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's kind of funny you mentioned that chess analogy, because I remember a specific scene when the governor was shot dead. It showed a scene of a chess piece that he had, and the walkers like stepping on it, I think. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, no.
Oh. I think it was like a white king piece, and there was like a eye patch drawn over the eye, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember that, but it's been so long since I've seen that season.
That's okay. So yeah, I mean, the governor definitely brought his fair share to the table. So now I want to kind of go on to the next villain, and that's Negan. You know, when he made his first appearance on the show, you can tell he meant business. He was not someone you wanted to fuck around with, and if you did, you would pay for it. So what did you think about Negan as a character?
Okay, so fun fact about the whole build up to Negan, okay?
Okay.
I had my my mom watching it, I had my stepdad watching it, I had friends watching it. Every single week they would message me and they'd be like, you know, is that person Negan? Is that person Negan? Because, you know, they'd say like, I am Negan,
you know
Negan.
What I'm
saying? Yeah, and then the one guy that they end up killing, he's like, Rick's like, you know, where's Negan? He's like, I am Negan, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, so everyone's like, you know, is that person Negan? Is that person? And I always said the exact same thing. I said, you will know when you see Negan.
Oh yeah.
Like you will have no question at all in your mind that, you know, and I was right. Like as soon as he came out of that camper trailer or whatever, everybody's like, yep, okay,
that's him.
Yeah. So Negan is without a doubt like my favorite villain on the show.
Okay.
Like, hands down.
Do tell.
Well, so kind of like the governor, you know, he's very, very charismatic. Like Negan's one of those characters that you love, but you feel ashamed for liking him. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I think so. I think I see where you're going with this.
Like he's so rude. He's so crass about everything, and like you just feel like you like him, and you're like, why do I like this guy? He's such an asshole,
and he knows it too.
Exactly. Like he don't even try to hide it. You know.
He's like, yeah, I'm an asshole. So what?
But I think. You know, I think that's the reason why, like, a lot of people, you know, like Negan. But he also puts his money where his mouth is. Like, you know, like what he might be all jokes and ha ha ha, but you know, when he gets serious, like you listen.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Like I remember his opening monologue. He basically said, like, there's this one line that he said, "You give me half your shit, or I'll kill you."
And you know, that's something we're gonna have to come back to in a little bit
for sure.
But man, I mean, like Negan was the governor cranked to 11. Like he was everything the governor was, and like a hell of a lot more. Like everything that Rick had done up to that point, like Rick thought he was the top dog of like, you know, the whole, and then in comes Negan, and he just taught Rick that like everything that Rick thought he knew, everything that Rick thought he was prepared for, Negan just turned everything around, you know what I'm saying? Because you know, Rick had dealt with the governor, he dealt with the Terminus, I think he had dealt with the wolves at that point.
I think they did, yeah.
And, so Rick thought, he'd basically seen it all at that point, And especially after clearing out Alexandria of, 400 or something walkers with only, 12 people, Rick was feeling pretty untouchable. And you could tell when, he attacked the outpost and they just go through, they just kill everybody. And Daryl, who we'll talk about in a minute, he's when they go to the hilltop, and the hilltop's we see Negan, he killed one of our people, and they're like, well, have you actually seen Negan? And they're like, well, we haven't seen him, but they killed one of our people, and Daryl's like, well, he's just a boogeyman, this guy's just a story, he doesn't exist. And so, Rick and everybody thought, oh, this guy doesn't exist, and if he does, he's just another pushover. And then Negan just comes out and just obliterates everything.
And he made quite a statement by killing Abraham and then Glenn.
Exactly. And but that's the thing, it's when leading up to it, you think you know everything about Negan. You think you're ready. You really do. You're like, okay, bring Negan on, I'm ready. And then he just obliterates every expectation that you had.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people, everybody knew, and I remember everybody knew somebody was going to die.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, everybody knew that Negan was going to kill somebody, but nobody expected to.
No.
Nobody expected that Negan almost had Rick cut off Carl's arm.
Yeah, and then he said to him, now that's the look I want to see.
Right. You're still giving me that look like I shit in your Cheerios. But here's the thing, okay? As much of an asshole as Negan is, Negan's also fair.
Yeah. He's not a dirty fighter, yeah.
No, he's not. In fact, he likes things fair. When, for example, when he was in Alexandria and Spencer comes up trying to talk to Negan saying, I want to get rid of Rick. My mom used to run this place. I can run this place better than Rick. Negan kills Spencer just for trying to be a dirty, backstabbing rat. You know what I'm saying? If... Another thing is, when it comes to Glenn and Abraham's death, the reason that Negan killed Abraham is because Abraham would have been the one to stand up to Negan.
You think so?
Come on, dude, it's Abraham.
I mean, it's Abraham, but okay, I can see where you're going, because I remember watching the scene and looking at Rick's face. He was completely broken. He was, because you could tell it's I lost.
But if Negan would have let Abraham live, do you really think that Abraham was going to sit back and just let the Saviors come into Alexandria and take half of everything? I
don't think so.
No, and Abraham was the strongest looking at the time.
Yeah, he was the biggest one, right?
Yeah, so he had to go. But the thing is that Negan was only going to kill one, okay? And when he pointed the bat at Maggie, and he's like, she almost looks dead, I might as well end her suffering, and Glenn interfered. He's like,
no.
He's like, I get it. It's an emotional moment. Everybody gets one.
I'll let it slide.
He's like, yeah. And then Daryl comes along and punches Negan in the face. That is why Glenn died.
Daryl basically provoked Negan into killing Glenn.
I mean, it was Daryl's fault. I mean, you can try to say how it's Daryl's personality, and it is, but the fact is that Daryl's actions got Glenn killed.
Now I have a question for you about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think that, let's say Daryl didn't do that, do you think that Negan would have killed Glenn anyway? Now, hear me out. Do you think Negan would say something like, I don't think you truly believe what you're saying about me being in charge. Maybe I need to prove this point once again, and then bash Glenn's head in?
No, I don't.
No?
Not at all. I can say for 100% certainty, I don't believe he'd do that.
Okay.
And the reason for that, and this is going into a really big topic, is when it comes to Negan, everybody is a resource.
Right.
Negan does not like to lose anybody, not even one guy.
No.
And it doesn't matter if it's a worker, it doesn't matter if it's a soldier, it doesn't matter if it's a gatherer. To Negan, they're all resources. And losing one is losing potentially that day's resource, okay?
Right.
So, for example, here's a perfect example. Say you got two guys who can go out and plant 7 trees every day, okay?
Okay.
And then so every single day you get 14 trees, okay?
Yep.
And, so, and then one day one of those guys, dies. Now every day, instead of, 14 trees, now you're only getting 7, which is literally half.
Right.
That losing half just from losing one guy, that's a loss.
And Negan lost quite a few when Rick and company attacked the outpost.
Exactly.
And Negan only wanted to kill one of Rick's people. Now, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but, I don't want to say it's a good deal, but it kind of is it's not a bad deal losing one person as opposed to 20.
Negan killing one of the group members, it served quite a few purposes. One, it was a trade-off. 2, it was basically Negan saying, this is the power that I have. This is how easy it is for me.
You work for me now.
Yeah, and then, that was basically a third, is to show him, Rick is not the king dog of the mountain. I am. And I'm the one that you're going to be listening to. You know what I'm saying? If you think about it, it's the whole schoolyard mentality, There's the bully that comes along, and then the new kid comes along who's the bigger bully, dethrones the old bully. It's sort of the classical, like I said, the whole classical playground rules. Rick came in, killed all these groups, killed all these people. He came in, got Alexandria practically handed to him.
Yeah.
And then Negan comes in and he's just like, nope, none of this shit's happening,
I will shut that shit down.
Yep. But the thing is like you asked, I don't think that he just would have killed a second person just because, and because that's not who Negan is. He doesn't just do things on a whim either. If that was the case, then, why did he, when Rick was about to cut off Carl's arm, why did he stop him?
Yeah.
And, Negan, well, he is, I will say this, he's definitely stronger than the governor. Numbers and resources. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to have any doubt about any of that.
Okay. He has that following. And it just makes you wonder, how did Negan managed to influence all those people to bend him to his will to the point where they're all saying, I'm Negan? It makes you wonder.
Well, the thing is that, you got to remember, to Negan and the Saviors, they're not, they're not the bad guys, you know what I'm saying? There's an old saying of, to every bad guy, they're the hero to their own story. And Negan is definitely that. He thinks that he is honestly saving people. He feels that without him, you're going to die anyway. So you're going to let me save you, or I'm going to basically kill you. And he sees it as a mercy thing. You know what I'm saying? Hence why he calls his group the Saviors. They are saving you. The people that work for Negan, when they're like his soldiers, he proves it with Eugene. He treats them good. They get rooms with electricity. Basically anything they could potentially just want.
They gave him a video game, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. And if you think about it, if you're in a world like The Walking Dead, and this dude is willing to give you all that, why would you not devote yourself to this guy? Would you rather, basically, think of it this way, okay? would you rather do this dude's bidding, okay, and basically, help keep this giant, army, I guess you can say, alive, or would, and all you have to do is, basically kiss this dude's ass, or would you rather go out and live in a tent and have to sleep, lightly and listen for walkers and basically live, I mean, which way are you going to go,
Okay.
That's why, that's why I honestly feel that is why a lot of people follow Negan and his group, is because, he has that,
Yeah. It's like means to an end, right? Like, I'll serve Negan, he'll keep me safe.
Exactly. And
that's the thing about Negan. I think Negan lives by a code, if you know what I mean. Like, the code being, you do what I say, you follow me, I'll take care of you. If you don't, then you're gonna fucking pay for it.
And that's actually a mob mentality. I don't know if because you're over in Canada, I don't know how much of the mob you guys actually have.
I can't
there.
answer that question.
But anyways, like it's simple, okay? It's the mob goes to places, okay? And they say, you're going to pay us money and you're going to pay it every month. And if you pay us the money, we protect you. If you have any problems, you give us a call and we'll take care of any problem that you have. If someone robs you, don't call the police, call us. If anybody comes and destroys your shit, don't call the police, call us, we'll take care of it. And for the most part, they really will, because you are a source of income for them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And if you don't pay them, then they're going to destroy your stuff, because the way they see it, your stuff would get destroyed without them anyway. Now, who does that kind of sound like?
It sounds a lot like Negan, if you ask me.
Negan, I don't even know where to go with this. Like, he's just such a large character, and I mean, he's obviously still on the show, so he's still developing. But I honestly feel that Negan and Rick are two sides of the same coin. You know what I'm saying? Rick needed to come across Negan, and Negan needed to come across Rick. In the comics, when Negan got captured, Rick basically told Negan that, he was going to spend the rest of his life in a cell. He was going to see that he was wrong about everything. And Negan basically told Rick, he's like, I know what you're going to do. He's like, you're going to go out there, you're going to address everybody. He's like, you're going to say this, you're going to say this, you're going to say this, and you're going to say this. He's like, I already know. He basically says, you're not fucking pulling any wool over my eyes. I already know. And, Rick trying to be Rick is like, no, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. Rick then goes out there, and Negan's listening from his cell, and Rick turns around and says everything that Negan said he was going to say.
Wow.
And the final panel of that comic, Negan just looks like he's looking at you, and he just says, good boy. So Negan's already there. Like, once Negan is in your head, it's game over.
And I think that's another thing that Negan brings to the table, is his ability to kind of get into your head. That psychological advantage, if you know what I mean.
Oh, without a doubt. In fact, half of every battle is mind games, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're facing somebody and you don't break down their mind and they're mentally strong, it just makes things way harder. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why, when you're playing a fighting game with somebody online and you play them enough, you're in their head. You know what they're going to do, and they become easier to fight because you're in there, you know what I'm saying? And, it's not hard for Negan to get inside there, when he first meets you, he has like a system. He tells you the rules, he kills one of your people, he does it in front of you, and he basically takes control from there. And he was inside Rick's head for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that first meeting really left an impression on him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because after that, like, when Negan would come to collect his share, Rick was like, all like, he was all like stuttery, like, look, I know this isn't much, but it's all we got. You remember?
Well, I like how Negan said it better. Like, when he first got there, he's like, here, hold this for me. And he gives him Lucille. And then before he leaves, he's like, oh, I almost forgot. And he's like, Rick, can I have my bat, please? And Rick goes and gives it to him. And then Negan leans in and goes, I just slid my dick down your throat, and you just thanked me.
Oh, I remember that.
You remember that now?
I do, yeah, it's coming back to me.
Yeah, so, I mean, but also, if you think about it, Negan keeps Rick on his toes, because while he's playing mind games with Rick, he's making sure that Rick can't get into his head, at least for the most part. And this is going to cover a lot of ground at once, so feel free to jump in anytime I'm talking, because I know I can keep on going.
That's fine.
So, when he's playing mind games with Rick, he wants to make sure that Rick can't get into his head, right? And if you think about it, he's kind of doing the same to us, because meanwhile, we're trying to figure Negan out, you know what I'm saying? So, when Carl, when they take Alexandria's guns, and then Carl magically ends up having, like, some sort of, like, assault rifle or something, I don't know. And he hitches on a ride on the truck. He's like, I'm going to go kill Negan. We're like, oh my God, you're fucking dead. You know what I'm saying? And then, he gets caught by Negan and everything. We think Negan's going to kill him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
No, he actually, I don't want to say applauds, but he basically acknowledges, like, you know what? You got some balls.
I mean, there's that moment where he's like, what happened to your eye,
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, show me your eye. And like Carl's crying about it. And he's like, I said, show me your eye, And when he does it, he kind of, you can tell that when he lifts the patch and like Carl's kind of sobbing about it, you can kind of tell that Negan's like, okay, I did kind of push this a little far.
And he admits that too.
Yeah. So, he does. If anything, he doesn't kill Carl. If anything, it actually buys Carl points with Negan just for being so ballsy.
And he admires that courage in people.
Not in more than one way. Like that's one of the reasons why he admires Judith, is because she's shown some balls, especially for someone so young.
Yeah, like she pointed a gun at him when he was riding his motorcycle down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you could tell he kind of just didn't expect that.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, the secret to getting into Negan's head, and it's something that eventually, Rick and his friends do figure out, is the secret to getting into Negan's head is actually in his past. And the secret to Negan is in his past. And it's one of the things that make his character so great, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, before the whole zombie apocalypse, even started, he was a school coach. He was like, I think he was like a car salesman or something like that, which is one reason why he's just so charismatic. But, he also cheated on his wife a lot. But when she ended up getting... Yeah, when she ended up getting cancer, he legit felt bad about it.
And then he stopped.
And, yeah, he stopped until she ended up dying. And even then, he just felt really bad, which is why he named his bat Lucille,
Right.
And, he, as much as we like to say that, Negan is, really smart and everything, which he is, he is kind of slightly unstable. I mean...
Maybe not so much as the governor, but...
Well, I mean, like, when he gets mad, he loses all tactical focus. You know what I'm saying? Like every bit of reasoning just goes right out the window. Like when Rosita shot at Negan and accidentally hit the bat, like he lost his shit, and you just don't fuck with that bat, you know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely not. So, would you say that his past is his biggest weakness?
Without a doubt. I mean, it plays a huge part of his character, and the guilt that he feels about his wife and everything, you can tell really weighs heavy on him, and it kind of messes with him, psychologically, and that, later in the season when like Maggie goes to Alexandria to kill Negan, she's like, and he basically, is telling her, please just kill me. I can't take this anymore. It's because he's been left alone in there basically with his thoughts, with his guilt, and he can't take it anymore. You know what I'm saying? So without a doubt, his past plays a huge part on him. It is his weakness. He puts on the tough persona and everything. Without it, he is tough, but his past is, once you find out his past, you have the means to beat Negan.
Yeah, and I think with that said, that kind of shows that he still has some bit of humanity left in him.
I think he still has quite a bit of humanity left in him, because one, it might be for different reasons, but when Morgan was taught that all life is precious, you know what I'm saying? In Negan's own way, he was kind of saying the same thing. That's why, no matter how many times groups fought him, he would try to kill as less as possible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, that's why he lost it with Simon, because when he had those people at the junkyard shot up and killed,
Oh, yeah, that was a whole community of resources just completely lost.
And to make sure that doesn't happen again, he killed Simon.
Yeah, I mean, Simon, the reason Negan got mad at Simon was because, that was resources that were completely lost. That was an entire community. That was easily like 20, 30, 40 people that Simon and his group just completely wiped out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and like you said earlier, that's much less people delivering resources. That's much less resources to survive.
I think there is one more thing that we need to talk about, though, before we wrap up this video. And I think that is, between the governor and Negan, how strong their basically their mind games were on people. Like, do you remember when the governor had Maggie and Glenn kidnapped, and he made like Maggie strip down?
Yes,
like,
I
in
can't
front
believe
of
I forgot to
Glenn?
mention that. Yes.
Yeah, and even though he didn't do anything to Maggie, like Glenn thought he did.
Yeah.
That, and then, as we mentioned before, Negan making Rick almost cut off Carl's arm, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The mind games on both characters were, like, really strong, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure.
And I really do think that, as I've said before, the mind games play a huge part in how these antagonists, fought Rick and his group.
Right. And that's actually a good point you mentioned, because you remember you mentioned that, Negan didn't really want Rick getting in his head.
Yeah.
But when they're fighting on the hill, Rick does get in his head. Because when they're fighting, Rick's like, look, just give me 10 seconds, we can talk about this. Do it for Carl. And then Negan's like, 10, 9. And then Rick's like, look, we can have a future together. We don't have to fight anymore. And then Negan's like, Carl was wrong. And then Rick's like, no, Carl was right. And then Negan has this look on his face. Like, it's so much emotion that he's feeling that he's happy to hear that there's possibly a way out of all this fighting, but at the same time, he's possibly afraid of losing what he built over all this time. And then Rick slit his throat.
But yeah, I mean, between Negan and the Governor, I really don't know what else to say. I mean...
So yeah, I think we talked a lot about Negan, what he brings to the table, his weaknesses, his strong points. So now that leads us to the big question. Which of these two is the better villain? So I'll let you answer first. Of these two characters we've talked about, the Governor and Negan, which of these two do you think is the better villain, and why?
Hands down, Negan.
And why is that?
Because, I mean, Negan is everything the Governor is, and then some. Like I said before, he's everything that the Governor was, cranked to an 11. But he also has more humanity and a lot more of an emotional, like, I don't want to say stability or anything, but like he just shows more emotion and everything than the Governor ever did. And between Negan's history, how Negan views everything, I mean, the guy brought Carl back and made him spaghetti. Which by the way, that spaghetti looked really good. By the way, I wanted spaghetti when that was done. So, but yeah, it would definitely have to be Negan for me.
Okay, that's a good answer. I can definitely see your reasoning behind that. So now it's my turn. Who do I think is the better villain? This is not an easy question to answer because you have two of these great villains that bring so much to The Walking Dead, and it's not an easy choice to make. It's like Pepsi or Coke. Which one do you go with? But I've made up my mind. It came really close to call, and my answer may surprise you. But I'm going to pick the Governor, believe it or not.
That's surprising.
I'll tell you why. There's a couple reasons why I think so hear me out. You mentioned earlier about Negan having more humanity than the Governor, and I agree. I feel that the Governor had less humanity, and because of that, I'd say he's more evil than Negan. And as much of an asshole as Negan is, he's still a likable guy in some regard, but the Governor, on the other hand, was more dislikable. Second reason's probably the biggest reason. I just think that overall the Governor is more villainous than Negan. Because once the Governor lost it, he just became this murderous, psychotic villain that we got. Negan, on the other hand, I'd argue isn't as villainous, at least not anymore. Negan's kind of like an anti-hero, if you will, and not so much a straight-up villain anymore. Like, he's changing as the show progresses. He's changing as a character as we see. If Negan stayed the same way he was when he first appeared, I would have picked Negan. But I picked the Governor because when he became a villain, he stayed that way until the very end. And like you said, the Governor was needed for Rick at the time. So if it wasn't for the Governor, Rick wouldn't be the person he is now. So yeah, for those reasons, I'm going to say the Governor.
Yeah, you definitely make some very valid points about the Governor. But, I mean, Negan's always going to be my main man, so... But again, I mean, these whole thoughts, going right back to what we said at the very beginning, I mean, it's these kind of thoughts is why I think that The Walking Dead has been as popular for so long as it has been, is because of these differences that people can come up with, just as you and me did right here.
Exactly, and that's what's part of the fun. We may not have come to the same answer, but we at least got to hear a different perspective. I got to hear your perspective and you got to hear mine. And yeah, just having these different thoughts and discussions is what's part of the fun. So there you have it, guys. Derrick believes that Negan is the better villain, and I believe that the Governor is the better villain. But what do you guys think? Who do you think is the better villain? Talk about it in the comments, because we'd really love to hear your thoughts on this one. Just before I go for today, I want to thank you, Derrick, for being here. I had an awesome time, and I'd love to do it again sometime.
Hey, thanks for having me, dude. I had a lot of fun doing this with you.
Yeah, it was an awesome time. I had a lot of fun. So, thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you next video. Take care, guys.